Demon's Souls is a new title from Bluepoint Games, but what a lot of people don't know is that it was loosely inspired by an obscure 2009 game called Demon's Souls. The game is revered for both being abnormally difficult amongst its more hand-holding peers and for eventually establishing a new subgenre in the games industry, even if its successor gets all the credit for it. This game falls in line with Bluepoint's previous work on Shadow of the Colossus, meaning that this is a remake in the sense that it's completely rebuilt from the ground up, but more so in the attempt to replicate and modernize the original rather than to reimagine it entirely. Given their track record until now, Bluepoint has notable skill when it comes to copying other people's work and making it look just a little bit better, a skill that I personally got quite competent in during high school. The overwhelming majority of the game is indistinguishable to the original outside of its visuals, though there are a handful of quality of life changes, as well as new features and secrets that show a certain level of affection to the original that I can't help but appreciate. There are a few changes that are undoubtedly going to upset some of the more hardcore fans of the original title, like a soundtrack relying more on strings and vocals than heavy brass, and some environmental tones being shifted, but for every scene slightly worsened by these alterations, there are so many that gain tremendously from them. For the most part, this is a faithful recreation of a game that a ton of people love and that a ton of people have never gotten the chance to play. Although only a bit over a decade old, this is a game that really deserves a chance to find new audiences who never had a PS3 or were simply too distracted to play the game, given that it came out within the same week as hits like Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, Brutal Legend, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, Lucidity, Critter Crunch, Cities XL, Operation Flashpoint 2 Dragon Rising, Game Party 3, Cars Race-O-Rama, Ju-On The Grudge, NBA Live 10, NBA 2K10, A Boy and His Blob, Star Wars The Clone Wars Republic Heroes, Wii Fit Plus, Field Runners, Cannabolt, Half Minute Hero, Saw the Video Game, and Jammer Lammy. While an improvement in graphics is often to be expected with new hardware, it's hard to discuss Demon's Souls and not take at least a second to acknowledge its visuals. The game is beautiful, and it's also fucking disgusting. Its enhancements go far beyond simply looking pretty, but also livening the environment and engrossing you more into its evocative, terrifying settings. The game weighs on you more and more as you trudge through its depressing and decaying worlds. The haunting prisons of Latria and slimy swamps in the Valley of Defilement are all the more chilling with this new attention to detail and use of 3D audio. It's one thing to have an armored guy run at you with a sword, but it's an entirely different experience to have a Cthulhu monster from hell shamble its way toward you while making slurping noises only to suck your brains out of your head. The game can be tough, but it's not bullshit. Most of the time. The bosses are still a highlight, though the majority really only have a small handful of attacks and reward you instead with using your brain and your full arsenal rather than just your skill. The real kick comes from the levels themselves, each of which is a long, winding labyrinth with some straight up evil design choices, like flying enemies that shoot stuff at you while you're fighting a mini-boss, enemies that are able to damage you just by moving, being forced to sprint down a hallway while a ghost guy shoots a laser at you only to then be surprised when you finally get to him by a grim reaper hidden around the corner who can stun and one-shot you. Your sword clangs into wall after wall to your right, to your left, above you, even behind you, so you can't even hit enemies sometimes, even though this doesn't affect them. The list goes on, and these can range from fair and understandable to me questioning my very reason for existing. And mind you, this is all in your first playthrough. New Game Plus is an entirely different story. It's like the enemies got twice as strong, but the developers forgot to scale up the amount of souls you get, meaning that you can end your first playthrough able to one-shot every enemy in the game, but then you get one-shotted by a basic grunt the second time around. You can very much tell that this was the first game in a series. It's teeming with brilliant concepts, but there is some refinement needed, and thankfully, given that we have the beauty of hindsight, we can see this occur through the remainder of the Souls series. However, given that this remake is so loyal to the original, it's simultaneously the most impressive in the series from a technical standpoint and the most antiquated from a design one. Its insane beauty is incredible to marvel at even after dozens of hours, but this facade of appearing to be a big-budget 2020 title makes these weird-ass 2009 design decisions and hiccups stick out even more. Some enemies and even bosses are still completely broken and just fly away from you rather than try to fight. Others get trapped on the geometry, constantly commit suicide, or are placed in places solely meant to be frustrating rather than engaging and challenging. The game has a problem where it punishes you for creating very specific character builds, but fails to encourage you to diversify your loadout early in the game. As of now, a melee build can be punished for coming against enemies that are never within arm's distance, archer builds are punished with an aiming mechanic that is completely terrible, and magic builds are punished with the game being a complete and utter joke against them. Additionally, the game features an otherwise unseen world design from other entries in the series with very linear level structure with multiple paths encouraged to take from the start. On one hand, it offers great diversity for repeat playthroughs so veterans can shake up their level order and give newbies a chance to try somewhere else if their current path is too hard, but that can backfire in big ways when everywhere they go is going to be as equally strong of a huge brick wall. I guess you could argue there's a bit of a difficulty difference in each world, but it's really not that much, and given that they're all fairly close to one another in terms of challenge, your last few levels are going to end up being complete cakewalks, and the first few levels are going to feel so demoralizing as you're getting equally torn apart in each area. With this lack of a balanced incline in difficulty, new players are left thinking, alright, well this castle with the stun-locking knights is screwing me up, but maybe I can try the fire maze, or maybe the hell prison, or maybe the skeleton cliffs, or maybe the poison swamp, or maybe the dragon boss that one-shots me, or maybe the boss that's a bunch of fake enemies. Thankfully, there are in fact facets of the game that have been improved upon in this remake to make your experience more enjoyable. The load times are incredible, being able to change the appearance of your character is appreciated even though I still hid them behind a helmet 99% of the time, as is the new secret armor set, the mirror mode, the unique weapon animations, and the ability to send items back to storage on the fly so you don't have to deal with over-encumbrance and dropping items for space. Not that I'll ever complain about having to swing by Stockpile Thomas to clear my inventory, whose wonderful facial animations really give me a sense that he admires me and respects my courage, you know? Completely ignoring all the times I've killed myself in front of him so that the levels don't get any harder. See, one of Demon's Souls' most vital components is world tendency. Now I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I've played this game twice through now on the PS5 and once through on the PS3, and only now am I somewhat confident enough to describe the ins and outs of this mechanic. Hell, even after rereading wiki posts again and again, I keep finding things that I never knew about, and in some ways, that's super rewarding, but in other ways, it's super stupid, given that 1, this mechanic acts as a complete game changer, impacting the items, enemies, and levels that you come across, and 2, it's never mentioned one goddamn time in the actual game. Actually, that's a bit of a lie. It is mentioned one time in the game, in the hub world, in a dead end, amongst 50 other tutorial messages that the developers forgot to tell you about, written in as vague of a manner as humanly possible. But it is there. It is there, technically. Now, it is great to create a game that encourages people to talk to their friends or look up guides online, but this is an example where I feel like that is more of an excuse that is just passing off a questionably complex and vague system overall. Now, Bluepoint did fix something about world tendency in the remake to make it more comprehensible, and by that, I mean they changed the image in the menu from this to this. So now that you've had time to properly analyze this, I am sure that you understand everything pretty clearly. Despite that, I am going to do my best to explain world tendency, this game-altering mechanic, in as brief and succinct of a manner as humanly possible, and I am going to do it in under 60 seconds. Okay, here we go. World tendency is a sort of morality meter in the game, with each of its 5 worlds having their own which starts out at a neutral state. While playing the game, you can become human by killing bosses or using limited items which increases your health to max, but doing so and dying in a world will darken its tendency. A dark world tendency will bring about more challenging enemies, but will also give you more souls and items, so if you want the game to be easier, you need to go back to the Nexus and kill yourself in human form so that you can respawn as soul form and go about the levels dying as much as you want and not darkening your world tendency in the process. To make your game easier, you need to not die in human form and kill bosses, which will lighten your world tendency towards white. What if there are no more bosses, you ask? Good question. If there are no more bosses to kill and you have black Black World Tendency, your only options are to kill invading players, or these terrifying bug-like enemies, or these NPC invaders that spawn once in each world in each playthrough. Achieving max White World Tendency will give you White Character Tendency. Now, is Character Tendency like World Tendency, you ask? Yes. Also, kind of. Character Tendency goes to White when you have had every world as White World Tendency, so long as you've never had Black World Tendency, and if you've ever had Black World Tendency, you will not be able to unlock the items earned for having pure White Character Tendency unless you played the game again and kill NPC invaders and go online and kill other human players. To have Black World Tendency, you simply need to kill NPCs and die a lot, which will also give you items that you can't get otherwise. Outside of that, Character Tendency, unlike World Tendency, has no impact on the game or difficulty whatsoever. See, to be fair, it's really not that hard to explain. I understand that this is a split issue, and it's not something that I'm even sure Bluepoint would be willing to do, but I feel like they've more than shown that they have the skills and the passion to do more than just reskin these classic titles. Preservation is an incredibly important facet to the industry, and it's something that overall we as a collective group should strive to do better with. And for that reason, it's great that people have an accessible and exciting way to play Demon's Souls nowadays, but that doesn't mean that this product can't be improved in the transition. It's far from inappropriate to call this game an important piece of art, but it's also far as hell from perfect, and if they wanted to, I am positive that Bluepoint could take this game to the next level. Given that a ton of people are going to disagree with me, which is totally fine, an easy solution would be to create two modes, one that is identical to the original title, and one that offers enhancements and other robust changes. You can go wild and give people a boss rush, or a mode that makes the game more accessible and less tedious to casual players by removing a need to grind for consumables, or have an option to eliminate World Tendency altogether. You can make AI snappy and responsive, remove annoying and unnecessary features, remove this enemy from the game. The ideas are limitless, and Bluepoint should be encouraged to iron out the wrinkles that they otherwise so desperately try to preserve. As a game, Demon's Souls is an engaging and rewarding experience, though one that is still a bit rough around the edges. While it's most well known for spawning a series of classic titles, it is undoubtedly a classic in and of itself. As a remake, this is a gorgeous and faithful love letter to one of the decade's most significant titles, even if that faithfulness can sometimes seem to be to a fault, and it's also an obvious pickup for fans of the series or for those interested in diving into them. If you tried it before and you didn't like it, this probably isn't going to change your mind unless you just want to look at prettier scenery as you wish for the sweet release of death. If you're new and feeling discouraged or demoralized, don't be. This game is going to keep putting up walls in front of you, and at times you'll get frustrated and overwhelmed, but that's what makes this game so special, that once you've overcome those obstacles, you're always met with something worthwhile and beautiful on the other side.